Constructing your life is about much more than just building a bank account. Each week, join real estate entrepreneur and mindset coach Austin Linney as he interviews guests who are constructing their dream lives and impacting the world around them on a daily basis. If you're an entrepreneur or wanting to start a business, or you just want to hear motivating stories of how others have overcome the odds, you are in the right place. And now for your host, Austin Linney.
Guys, welcome back to Construct Your Life. This is Austin Linney here. And for the first time in the history of the podcast, we have another Austin on. So Austin Hartley, how you doing, my brother?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Austin.
Dude, my pleasure, man. So we can get started where you want. Guys, to be honest with you, this is the first time we've spoken in person. So we're going to get to know them just like you get to know them. We know how we do it on this podcast. So you can start where you want to on your story, man, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, well, I guess I'll start out. I'm also from Texas originally, but I've grown up and really lived most of my life in the Denver, Colorado area. I've been interested in real estate. First time we've spoken in person, but you were super helpful. I've actually been thinking about moving out to Austin, Texas, and you reached out to me on Facebook and gave me tons of great information. So I really appreciate that. But I guess I'll start with growing up. I was always an athlete. That was kind of all I did. I played a ton of basketball. I was kind of an awkward, lengthy kid and didn't do much besides play ball. I played basketball my freshman year out in Nebraska and then transferred to Colorado State University where I just focused on school, enjoyed that. And then I thought I wanted to be a pilot. Went through that, decided that wasn't for me, and I got into real estate, and I've been doing that for about 5 years now, from new construction, land development, investing, residential resale, touched multiple different areas in this industry and fallen in love.
I love it. So that's great because I've been teaching myself new construction. So selfishly, we'll talk about that later. But as you've grown up in your career, a lot of the listeners that listen to me are getting into the business or newer to the business. You know, a lot of people say, hey, Austin, focus on one thing. Don't do that too many things, right? But you seem to be a guy that likes a lot of stuff like me. You like a lot of different avenues. Is that because you had the bandwidth for that, or you've surrounded yourself with a good network of people that can maybe,
I'm definitely the entrepreneur who struggles with the shiny object syndrome for sure. Jumping around to all the different opportunities, wanting to learn things, getting bored quickly. And I would have to say, if you really want to be successful, you need to dive in and focus on one avenue and really build that up, become a master at that. But when you're in your 20s, when you're getting into industry, I don't think there's anything wrong with bouncing around and playing with different aspects of the industry and figuring out what's going to actually work best for you. Because it could be different. It might be different than what you thought. The first thing I did in real estate was large land development deals in the commercial space. I thought that seemed really cool, exciting, but I just don't have the patience for some of those deals. It wasn't really quite up my alley. And but if you really do want to find success, I think you need to focus in. But in your 20s, you definitely have the time to kind of play around and figure out what's going to work for you.
No, 100%. And I talk to people that do large scale multifamily development, and we're talking about 4 years. And I'm like, dude, after 6 months, I've already forgotten about what we're doing. Like, how do you stay with a project that long and see it through, right?
Yeah. It takes a lot of patience.
What avenue currently is the avenue that you're loving the most, or something that you found that hits your passion the most?
Yeah. So I love helping people in real estate. Originally, what I wanted to do was be a financial advisor. I went to school, studied finance, and the goal behind that was really to help people with their finances. I watched my parents struggle financially as I grew up, and I just didn't want people to have to go through that. And if there's anything I could do, I wanted to help. I did an internship in college and discovered that being a financial advisor really wasn't accomplishing what I thought. And really more millionaires are made through real estate than anything else. It's typically the largest asset people own, and they have the most amount of their wealth and their equity in their home. And so it's a great avenue to help people. But what I really love doing and what most of my focus is on right now is actually building my brokerage. My dad and I are partners in our brokerage and currently building out the brokerage from a business standpoint. So creating the different departments, hiring on new agents, virtual assistants, a real life assistant here in the States, looking at it from a business standpoint and growing it. And I love I love this podcast of creating your life that you want. It correlates to my podcast, the Passion First podcast, of building a life that you want, that you're actually passionate about. And I think you can do that through business very easily by taking the processes or tasks in your life that you don't necessarily enjoy doing and finding someone to do that for you, and you focusing on what you're actually passionate about and what you actually want to do.
Well, what's interesting, right? And I just had this conversation with a multifamily guy this morning. We're now new best friends because I finally met somebody my age, and we're like on the same. Normally I'm helping young kids, so it was nice to meet somebody 38 who's been through it. But I said the number one problem with people is they create a business and then build a lifestyle around it. They don't create a lifestyle and build a business around it. And that's the genesis for this, podcast is, doesn't matter dollar amount wise where you're at. It just matters amount. Does it fit what you need truly in your core, right? And how many agents do you have in your brokerage at currently?
Just 4 right now. It's a new brokerage. I was actually working with the largest by volume number team in Denver, Colorado. And then COVID hit in April, and I switched over, partnered with my dad, and we've been growing it ever since. It's been awesome.
And a lot of people would have stayed with the bigger group because there's a name attached to it, right? But because you have your hands in it and you get to cultivate your people of all the years that you've learned, I'm sure there's a lot more joy and fulfillment out of watching your agent succeed than ever before, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, really, people I went to high school with, I've been able to bring them onto the team and really help them in their career. And that's really exciting for me.
If you were to talk, I coach about 3 guys that are about to get their agent, their real estate license. If you were to talk to your younger self and you were to tell that guy getting into real estate agent wise, what would you tell them if you had to hit 3 or 4 points?
First off, if you want to really be successful, it comes back to that focus. So this needs to be a full-time endeavor. If that means you stay in whatever job that you're doing right now for another 3 to 6 months, so you have kind of a cushion and a nest egg to make that jump full-time, I'd recommend that. Second, either find a large team to be a part of, or ideally find a broker or agent that's very successful, but that that you could help, that you have some skills, whether that's social media, that you think that you could help them brand that, or you just have some sweat equity. You're willing to go out, knock on some doors, hit some phones, learn from them, do the aspects of their job that they don't want to do. But they're going to be able to put you on a fast track in growing in this business. You're not taught through the courses on how to actually run a real estate business. You're just basically taught how to not be sued and the kind of legal aspects of the business. But it's really, if you can learn the business aspects early on, you'll be strides ahead of most people. And then tracking your numbers, creating a great system that you can be more effective, whether that's a great CRM and website, different lead flows, but creating a system and then tracking your numbers and expenses will really put you far ahead of the competition.
I love that. Just take that, put it there. Okay.
Yeah. And even a little quick one. I mean, Gary Keller's book, The Millionaire Real Estate Agent.
Yeah.
Tons of great information.
I tell every young kid, I just had a meeting with a brand new client, very young kid, 19 years old. If you read Think and Go Rich and seven, what Dale Carnegie's book, highly effective. What's that?
Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then there's
you read those 2 books. That is a blueprint on how to live an epic life. I mean, it really spells it out. Verbatim.
Absolutely. 2 of my favorites.
Yeah. So what we're going to do, guys, is we covered the real estate quota. Get out of here, real estate. Because I know we're going to talk about what you're truly passionate about, which is your podcast, which is passion and mindset and just a whole life millionaire, which I prescribe to. Right. So let's talk about, the genesis behind the podcast, kind of how you view passion and stuff. Because if you haven't met me, you could tell it comes out of my ears in buckets. So, maybe a little too much in my 20s, right? So, but what's your view on, because passion only gets you so far. It is an ingredient. It's an ingredient that is needed. But I find that energy is the secret weapon. Momentum and energy is a secret weapon that people don't talk about enough.
So where the podcast came from and that title comes from, I had wanted to start a podcast for years, honestly, and was just afraid. I was afraid of people judging me and kind of putting myself out there. I didn't feel like I had enough value to add. And I just making excuses and finally just took the jump. And the passion first came from the idea that I've watched so many people, really in the United States, I think it's a disease of people staying in jobs that they absolutely hate, that they loathe going to work. When it comes Monday, they are dreading it. And I think that's so sad because so many people, if they just followed what they were passionate about, and you're right, passion only gets you so far. You need momentum, you need hard work, you need to educate yourself, you need to be confident. But I think it starts with that passion. You really need to just follow what you love to do. And that might not be at first making as much money as that corporate 9-to-5 job. But if you take that leap, I promise you're going to be a lot more happy. And so the podcast has basically become me try to convert people into entrepreneurs and trying to follow their dreams and just travel and have freedom.
You're a mean man. Yeah. And also introduce them to pain and misery. But here's the reason. The pain and misery is a choice, and it's your choice because you choose to have the freedom, right?
Yep.
And it's the same example of I don't schedule anything on Fridays because I don't want to. I'm going to go play golf or talk to investors. And that's what I told my assistant, right? Like I got my assistant from the podcast and he was like, I want to work for you. And I'm like, no. And he's like, kept hounding me. And then I'm like, okay, do this. And like, now he works for me. And I told him the other day, I said, bro, have I put a timetable on when you need to show up at work? I was like, you could work from 5 a.m. to 2 o'clock every day and be done. Like, that's it. And he goes, I can do that. And I go, yeah. And guess what? When we get really busy, if you've already created that's when you work, then I know that's when stuff gets done. So you have to trade maybe the comfort and the safety, but for punching your own clock, which I find to be amazing because you don't put a cap on. Like if I want to get after it one day, like I just get after it,
Yeah.
And it was actually AAA Adams. I say this on almost every podcast because he changed my life. We had a call with him and he looked at my schedule and he goes, your schedule's shit, bro. Like I can't do this. He goes, you travel all the time. He goes, you only do coaching Tuesday and you only do podcast on Wednesday. And I was like, well, what if somebody doesn't want to book on Wednesday? And he's like, it's okay. That's the day that you do podcast. And what it's done is it allowed me to stay focused on a single task, meaning all day. And I can go do 7 podcasts in one day. Yeah. And it's an amazing feat. I don't think people know how to manage their schedule and really tap into the power of a singular focus.
I think that's super powerful. And I think what you said, 2 of my mentors are Jordan Peterson and Jocko Willits. And they talk about you're going to have to face that pain no matter what. If it's staying in that complacent job and having the pain come on to you and you not being in control, or if you just tackle that head on, it's going to be a lot less painful. They talk about this in clinicians. I mean, it's proven psychology-wise that if you tackle something voluntarily, it's far less painful. I think that's really important, that striving for that in your life and creating that, for me, the time flexibility that you just highlighted, being in control of my own schedule, where there's some nights where I'll work until 9 p.m. and other days where I have family coming in, friends coming in. I'm going to get off at 2 p.m. Just enjoy my day. It's so empowering. I wouldn't trade that for money at all. I think being in control of your time is super important.
I heard something in a mastermind and somebody asked their goals and it was a thing that changed my life. She goes, I'm striving for one goal. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be good. And she goes, I don't want to be location dependent. And I was like, oh, that's a thing. I was like, and that totally like opened my whole, like, and so that's why I visited 9 states in the last month and did my podcast and did business from the road and the coaching and stuff. Because when you unlock that, that's like the secret key. And it really opens up your mind to think so much bigger.
Absolutely. And that's something that I'm working towards too. I love traveling as well. I try to do international trips every year. 2020 was a bit of a scratch.
Yeah, for sure.
But to have that freedom to travel anywhere, work anywhere, we have the technology and there's really very few barriers keeping people from being able to do that. And we have the freedom to set our lives up in that way.
And what along your, when did you tap in to the personal development, kind of that mentoring space? When did that start for you?
I'll tell a little bit of an embarrassing story. It's just the
Yes.
honest story. When I was in college, I was super involved in fraternity life, student government, was doing really well, but I was also pretty involved in the party scene and drank quite a bit. And I went through a pretty rough breakup. And we had a bar called Sundance, and on Tuesday nights there was 25-cent drinks. I got myself in trouble, had quite a few too many, and my ex-girlfriend was there, and I threw a drink on her, and we got an altercation, and I ended up actually getting arrested for that, and kind of reset my whole life. I lost all my friends, got kicked out of the student government, my fraternity, really reshaped. And it was my senior year, so I wasn't able to get a job, like kind of the normal job right after school. And through that experience, I really just had to figure out who was I. And I realized I wasn't happy with who I was. I wasn't going towards any goal. I was just kind of drifting in life, kind of drinking and doing the normal thing of going to school. And that's when I really dived in. I think the first book that I read was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and really caught the self-development bug and dived in for years. And that was back in 2016, and never looked back. Been a huge reader, just huge on self-development, and completely changed who I am as a person. I wouldn't ever change or trade that experience because of the way that it has shaped me. So not the fun-loving story, but the genuine, honest answer.
And see, you don't know a lot about me, but we have more in common than you think. So I had a drug addiction and a meth addiction at my early 20s, and was homeless for a little bit and slept in a closet because I didn't have nowhere to live. And then I quit that cold turkey, and then was a functioning alcoholic for 20 years. So I got sober a year and 7 months. I haven't touched a drink, and I've lost 60 pounds. So, but what I'm saying is, like, in that moment, right, when you lose your friends and you do this unspeakable thing that at your core, that's what hurts the most, because that's not who you truly are as a person. I'm looking at you now. You're a nice human. You like people, but there's something inside of you. How did you, this might be a little deeper question, but how did you make peace with yourself to create the shift? And I think that's the question I get asked the most. Like, how did you start? Like, what was the first thing that you had to tell yourself?
First thing was taking responsibility for that. I felt like what I did wasn't that bad at first. It was like, well, I've seen people do way worse and they haven't gotten in trouble. But shifting that to, this is an opportunity that God's given me to reshape my life, refocus on really what's important, and taking just ownership of my life, that I have the control. I think our society is suffering, that a lot of people in my generation feel like they're victims, that society's given them a hand and they don't have any, they can't change that. And listening to mentors, whether that's reading, listening to YouTube, podcasts, audiobooks, listening to people with more life experience and wisdom coming from another time, and just hearing their perspective that you do have control of your life, that you've made this mistake, but this mistake isn't who you are. You get to change this, and you can reshape your life. And one thing that I started doing at that time that is a little frou-frou-y, but is a vision board. And I can't tell you how much that's helped me just stay focused on what's actually important to me, what I'm actually working towards. I just have it in my shower when I wake up. I visualize, have my affirmations there. And there's so many things that I've put on there that I've actually accomplished and been able to take off. There's things I'll put on there that I think I want to accomplish and decide, no, that's not actually who I want to be. And it just helps keep me focused.
You gave like the greatest answer I've ever heard, because it really does start with that one thing. And it wasn't until, because here's the problem in the victim mentality. When you're there and you're bunkered in, there's no getting to you. There's no getting to you. And you combat everything. Well, yeah, but this is a problem, and I'm got an excuse for this, and excuse. That's what I deal with my clients all the time.
Yeah.
When you flip the switch, and regardless if it's your fault or not, and you take ownership of it, it doesn't control you anymore. Yep. And you can move forward. And when you made that switch and you started living in that personal development, you started ticking up. I would imagine obviously your personal life got better, but I would imagine business-wise and relationship-wise, it affected everything, right?
Completely changed. Yeah. I mean, I think too many people are, and this sounds harsh, but are truly lost souls
Yep.
that have forgot who they could be, have forgot about their passions, given up on their dreams. And if you can rediscover that, realize that you have the control, it's not going to happen overnight. But if you can take small steps, like I look back and I have a podcast that I absolutely love hosting. I love putting out. I have old friends of mine reaching out saying, "Hey, I see you're doing real estate, doing your podcast. Your life looks awesome. How can you help me?" And to be able to have that influence and be able to help people just doing what you love is amazing. But if you don't take the proper steps of first taking responsibility, finding the motivation on what's actually going to motivate you, what you're passionate about, and then surrounding yourself with the right people, that you're never going to make those changes. But start with that 1% a day progress. If that's waking up 10 minutes early, find those small little habits that are really going to make a big difference in your life and really make you into the person you want to be.
I was listening to somebody the other day. I don't remember the podcast, but they were saying as far as just drinking and like the negative habits that we have in our life, you're almost doing them subconsciously. You're not even doing them consciously because it's become so ingrained in who you are. And we really have to, like, what I call it, the spoke in the wheel. You know, when the bike's going down the street and you stick the stick in it, you have to do something. And I know this is about to sound crazy, and I'm sorry, I don't care. I'm really wild.
Say it. Yeah.
Sometimes on my clients, when they're very rigid on themselves and like hard on themselves and like really like in a box, you know what I tell them? I tell them to go out to the woods and streak naked. And what or jump in a cold river naked or something. What I'm trying to do is just awaken something inside of you that remembers when you were a kid. Like you used to want to have fun, right? And I did this podcast that I'm releasing in 2 weeks on fun. We as adults have removed fun from our life because we're trying to get to the next goal. Dude, I dance a lot.
Hell yeah.
You know, and I'm like happy. And that is an infectious around you. And when you create that energy vibe, you attract those type of people too. It's so important, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm part of a networking group, NCS, and it's a lot of high executive people, entrepreneurs, business owners. And one of the guest speakers had written a book on playing, how our society has lost playing and how important it is for our brains and development, our happiness, just to be able to have a couple hours a day, a weekend day to go play. And people focus too much on the business aspect, the money and life, and too little on just actually enjoying this. And I went on a scouting trip last weekend where we roughed it in with some backpacks in the middle of nowhere, Colorado. The leaves are changing. It was beautiful, but I was just out there isolated from society, no cell reception, and just enjoying life.
I love it.
No money or anything.
And you just reminded me, I totally forgot to tell you, November 8th, I'm going to be in Denver for the whole week. I'm setting up. I just signed a massive house in down on a mountain that I'm Airbnb-ing for a client. So you're going to have to come out to this ridiculous house and hang out with me, and we'll mastermind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a bunch of entrepreneurs and other guys, are really cool dudes. So, you know, that's what we're talking about, guys. Like, boom, right there. You know, like what I try to tell the young kids, right? If you're like 22, you've got like 65 years, and this goal, you know, I'm going to do this win. I'm going to do that win. No, I'm trying to live my life now. And, you know, another thing that I touch on a lot is that we as society we live our lives on absolutes. Yeah. Meaning, this is who I'm supposed to be with the rest of my life. This is the exact job I'm supposed to have. I've waited my whole life. And my good friend Casey Gray said to me, everything that has come to me in life that has been the greatest gift to me has never been come wrapped the way I thought it was going to be.
Isn't so it true though? So true. And I fall into that as well. I get very rigid with my goals, and then things don't go the way you expect, but that's part of life. It's not going to. And a lot of times, exactly what you said, the best things in life are total curveballs. And you're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that.
The universe is undefeated. And the moment that you put yourself in a box and you say, this is the only way I'm going to be happy, is the moment that you will be disappointed. It's the truth. And
so true.
Nothing in 2020 was like I thought it was going to be, but I have picked myself
That's
up.
An understatement.
Yeah, I have picked. Got laid off, got divorced, lost a house, lost a dog. Lost another job. Nothing I did, but guess what? I cling to the fact that I get to wake up every day, talk to people like you, and be on this podcast. And if we affect one person with this conversation to take that atomic habit and slide it just a little bit right, then we've done our job. And that's what you live on, and you let the rest be what it is, right? Yep. And here's the most important thing, and I'm sure you feel the same way. It's nice to talk to somebody that has a podcast. The message that you're doing is for two reasons. One, somebody 10 years from now could hear it because it's always going to be recorded, and it may be exactly what they need to hear then. But more importantly, don't you get joy out of documenting your journey? And you go back and you listen to the first one and you're like, who was that guy? Yeah, who was that idiot?
Dude, yeah, I look at the first couple episodes and I'm like, wow, that's so
idiot.
bad.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's so exciting to know that you've seen that growth so quickly, that you've changed and you've grown as a person. And then even the relationships that I've built just doing the podcast, I can't trade for the world. I mean, I've had Adam Adams on the podcast as well. I went to the best ever real estate conference with Joe Fairless back in 2016, his first one. And I met all these people and I started following them, listening to their podcast. They became role models of mine. And I've had a lot of those people on my podcast now, and it's been extremely rewarding and just incredible to have that experience.
I love it. So let's talk about the future and maybe just the next year and a half. We don't know 2 years. We don't know where everything's going to go. Everything's a loose thing. But what is the focus for Austin Hartley moving forward with the brokerage and investing? What are you looking at digging into? What excites you?
Yeah, continuing to grow the podcast. I'll always be doing that. But right now, the big focus of mine is growing the brokerage to a point where it's fairly independent, where I don't need to be involved in the day-to-day. We have a team. We have our TC team, our ISA team, and multiple advertising and marketing flows coming in where I can be, I'm not tied to Denver. You mentioned that she had that goal. I have the same goal, that I want to be able to be remote, and then shifting my focus to a full-time real estate investor. That's kind of the goal of 2021, is to really get the brokerage to where it needs to be, and then really shifting into real estate investing gear. And I think I'm going to start single family, but my long-term career goal is to become a multi-family syndicator as well.
And I would imagine what you were searching for by leaving the high volume team and building your own was the freedom also, right, of dictating the terms of your life, right? And that means more to you than any dollar amount, I would imagine, that exists on the planet, right?
For sure. Like, I've had a couple 9-to-5 jobs, and jobs where you're kind of tied to a desk. You have to put in PTO and ask when you can take time off. And I think that's the devil, dude. I can't stand that at all. And I work hard for sure, but I want to be in control of my time, be in control of what I work on. And that's what I think most people want, is freedom, right? Control over your life.
But I also think on the same coin, watch, I'm going to drop this question. I think we're the same person. I'm very odd how similar we are. What have you done? Because this is my whole year has been working on this. What have you done to give yourself grace and understand? Because I'm a worker. Like, I'll go. What have you taught yourself? Because, like, here's the thing with me. It's either pedal to the floor or nothing at all. Like, there's no middle ground. Yeah. Yep. Like, when I take trips and I go to Europe, I need 2 weeks. The first 10 days are for me to calm down, and then I actually enjoy myself. Then it's time to go home. Like, so what are you telling yourself? What have you taught yourself? What have you learned about yourself when you're doing that? Because I'm 90-0. It's the hardest thing I work on.
And I can relate to that so much, because I think entrepreneurs can be very critical of themselves. If we're not hitting that 100% grinding all the time, we feel like we're not working hard enough. And I had a guest on that I talked to. Do you know Jay Scott from Bigger Pockets? He came on. And
I know of the name. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he mentioned that if he's not in a good mental state, if he's not primed in a good mood, his work isn't good. He doesn't put in his best work, and I can definitely relate to that. And so he resets himself, whether that's a walk, whether he's going to go play with his kids. And so I've picked up on that. If I'm working just not in a good state, maybe I slept in, or I didn't get a good workout, or whatever it is, had a deal fall through, I'll stop working. I'll go hit a workout. I'll go take a walk, and then come back and refocus on what's actually important and just start working again. And sometimes it's a day's a wash, to be honest. I have days that I just have to give myself grace, but there's other days where that helps me refocus and go back at it.
I was talking to my coach, and I have a new soapbox I'm on. This is my new champion cry. I think we as a society have bastardized the to-do list. And what I mean by that is we've now incorporated the to-do list in our morning miracle, routine. And guys, the truth of the matter is there's always going to be something to add to the to-do list and do. And if you're not showing up as your best self and just clicking off the boxes, his joke was, now we put gratitude in the to-do list, and now I said my life is great. Why the fuck is my life still shit? Well, yeah, because you don't really mean it. It's not soaking in. You're just checking off the boxes, right? Guys, we have to get intentional about our time and where we're spending it and our focus that we're putting in, and not just click off the boxes. Don't you agree?
I agree with that 100%. And one thing a good friend of mine told me just a couple of weeks ago was, there's magic in the mundane of life. If you can be intentional in every moment, like you and me having this interaction, having a conversation, just being intentional about that. When you go to the grocery store, just being intentional and trying to make one person's day a little bit better, there's real magic to that. Instead of getting caught up and so focused on you and your goals and checking off all your items that you have to do, just enjoy life, that we're here. Take a breath. I think is really important, kind of lost, especially in this American culture. Like when I go to Europe, it sounds like you've traveled quite a bit. Yeah. It's very different. It's way more laid back. People are just enjoying life and hanging out. And America's kind of lost that. It's part of the reason we're so productive.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Europe in just a second, but I want to finish the point. You know what I've been doing? Savage move to everybody.
Let's hear it.
On DMs, I'm going to come on their podcast, or they'll like, I'll help them with something, and they're like, how can I support you? And this is what I send. I go, do you have a girlfriend or a wife? If you do, how you could support me is spend a little extra time with them, because that's the most important real estate transaction you'll do of your career. And they send back, shit. Because we're so focused on getting to the next point. And if you're so focused on your goals that you're removing yourself from being present for your loved ones, then that relationship is going to go to shit, which is going to affect every part of your life.
Absolutely.
And it's not important. So 4 years ago, we were in a place, my ex-wife at the time, now my ex-wife, but at the time we were married, and we were like, fuck, we hate our jobs. Like, this is not good. Like, we bought a house. The Airbnb was doing good with the one. We bought another house, and that was running Airbnb. So I'm like, shit, the bills are getting paid. So we bought we were like, let's go to Europe for like 10 days. We've been wanting to go like our whole life. Like, what are we waiting for? And all I did was send back. I said, why 10 days? Screw that. And so we bought one-way tickets, and we quit both of our jobs, and we went on a one-way trip to Europe. We went for 8.5 weeks.
Wow.
We just went, awesome. And it was like, I was running my Airbnb from a beach in Spain, and I was like, oh my goodness, you can do this. This is the thing. And that was like the aha moment that's been in the back of my head my whole life. And so next year is my 40th birthday. We are going for 6 weeks to Morocco, Croatia, Tuscany, Turkey. But the big thing is I'm having a birthday party on a catamaran in the Greek Isles, like for like a week. And everybody's like, why are you doing this trip? I'm like, because I've dreamed about this trip my whole life.
Forever. That's awesome.
And there is some joy in that when that is your goal, opposed to, well, I can buy this Lamborghini. Well, hey, dude, if you want to buy a Lamborghini, do it. But for me, I live my life off of experiences. That's the only 100%. Thing I care about, right? And 100%. So, like, now that we got you on the podcast, and now you have it on record. What is the dream trip that you've always dreamed of?
So I was planning this for 2020. Obviously, COVID threw a wrench in that.
Damn you,
I'm
COVID.
still committed to it. I'm going to do a 100-day trip around the world. Rough it, backpack, hostels, all that. Have all the spots picked out. I had it planned. Going cheap is going to cost about $15,000 for all the airfares.
That's it.
Hostels, food. That's it. It's not.
Dude, that's one wholesale deal.
That's one for sure. So it's just about making the time, and once travel kind of comes back, it's a little more normal, a little safer.
Here's what's more importantly. You ready? I know you're already thinking this. So I'm just giving you the same idea you've already thought of. Not only this, you can do a podcast the whole time you're gone and write a book on your travel. So boom, then you have material also.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We're going to highlight everything, do travel guides, reviews of places. Just traveling is one of my big,
it's everything.
Just passions, man.
It's everything. Yeah. I met my mentor through DMs, and I flew across the country for a 15-minute meeting that turned into a 2-hour meeting. Nice. Like I just love it. Like I was like, oh, you mean I get to get on a plane and go to Sacramento? Hell yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it.
And so I went to a meetup in Detroit. Well, why are you coming? And my favorite thing to do is when I'm in the room, they're like, what the hell is what the hell, guy? What's the dude doing in cowboy boots here? And I just straight up tell him, I'm just here for the meetup. I don't understand. I'm like, I'm good. And guess what? Every time I've gone to that meetup, I've made a friend for life or a business partner. Every time. But I'm open to the idea that might happen, so I'm willing to take the chance. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I think that's what a lot of people are closed off to moments in life because they're not walking in with an optimistic, what could happen, right? Instead of what's not going to happen. And I think when you walk in with that attitude, the universe rewards you with giving you what you need.
Absolutely. I could see that genuine spirit, the optimism, the contagion, that you're intentional in those interactions. And that's one thing I love about when I travel is I really just open up as a person. You're just there to experience life and be intentional and all that. And I need to be better about that just in my day-to-day life, going to the store.
Well, you're what you're doing, right? And a perfect example, my coach is a recovery specialist and a life coach. He's amazing. He's ridiculous. But long story short, he had a drug problem in his 20s and he got better because of his daughter. And I said something to him that changed his life. I said, by you getting your life together and being the father to this little girl, know that your little girl has saved 1 million+ lives.
Yeah.
And awesome. but we don't look at it in that context. Like, right? No. And so if you're flying somewhere and you say hello to the Uber driver and you actually give a shit about their day, think of how many people he could affect if you lift him up. And I just had lunch yesterday with Bruce Peterson. Dude, I'm in love. Do you know who he is? A Syndication is a Bitch. He wrote that book, Syndication is a Bitch. Okay. He's a multifamily guy. It doesn't matter. But he said he went in and he said every time he meets somebody, he doesn't care if like he lost like $1 million deal. He's like, how you doing today? I'm doing fantastic. And so everybody like stands back and they're like, but he's like, what should I tell you? Like, oh, my day's shit and I lost a bunch of money. Like, he's like, no, because I'm setting the intention that we're going to have a great conversation. And
yeah,
people are so focused on themselves that they're not understanding what energy plays. And there's no chance, right? This is what my mentor said. There's no chance that somebody doesn't meet me or meet you and they're not better for it, right? And so that's a great skill to have to get them out of their stuff, right? But we are so focused on what we're going to get or what we're going to get out of it instead of understanding. Like I met a young kid, right? He DM'd me. He's like, I'm loving the podcast. I was like, okay, let's have dinner. He's like, what? I'm like, let's have dinner. He's like, oh, you're like a real person and like you're going to help me. I'm like, yeah, like really. And now he's like doing wholesales with me. And I'm like, okay, well, there you go. Your life just changed in like one DM. But I just remember what I was saying. Something I tell every employee, this is my little secret I'm giving away now. When they say, thank you for the opportunity, I won't let you down. I say, no. I said, you created the opportunity by reaching out. So I could never be disappointed in you because you have to show up every day and duplicate that opportunity every day you show up to work. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, because if you don't have expectations of somebody, then you can't be disappointed, right? It's on you to show up every day. It's not me, right?
Yeah.
It's the truth.
They talk about one of the most effective ways to help employees be effective in their job is letting them set their own goals. put the ownership on them to decide what that's going to be, take ownership of those roles. And that's been impactful in my business thus far, just giving that to my employees and seeing what they do and seeing the different motivations between the goals that I set for them and what they set.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, man, how do they find the podcast? How do they find you if they want to reach out, all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. So social media, it's Austin James Hartley on all platforms.
Wait, hold on. Your middle name is James?
Yep.
So is mine. Get out of
nice. Here. Nice. Yeah. Real quick side story. I know a guy named Austin James Hartley, just missing the T. So yeah, it's a common name, but yeah.
We all need to hang out together. Yeah,
we do. It's going to happen. When you're visiting November 8th, I'll be hunting, but you said you'll be here for a week. So I'll connect with you right after. But Austin James Hartley, I'm super active on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And then the podcast is the Passion First Podcast on all platforms. You can also visit our website at thehartleyteamrealty.com.
Well, I appreciate it, my brother. Thank you so much. Guys, if you like this episode, make sure you share it with your friends. That's how we get the message out to everybody we can. And I really appreciate it, my brother.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much, Austin. Have a great day.
You got it.
Thank you for listening to Construct Your Life with Austin Linney. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and pay it forward by sharing with a friend. Most importantly, take this opportunity to start constructing your life by taking immediate action on what you learned. For show notes, resources, and more information on one-on-one coaching with Austin, visit constructyourlifepodcast.com.